if you just want to do the absolute fastest way to beat the game, you can beat the game in 7 minutes, which just...
Welcome one, welcome all to your guide to speedrunning The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time in 15 minutes or less, presented by GEICO. I'm Digon.
And I'm Emma. And we're gonna kick things off here with a real quick Wikipedia summary, a Quickipedia, if you will. Speedrunning is the art and competition of playing through video games as quickly as you can. There are speedruns for basically any game you can imagine, and there are lots of different ways to do it.
Today we're diving into The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, one of the most popular games in the history of games to run. Originally released on November 21st, 1998, Ocarina of Time is considered by both fans and critics to be one of the greatest games in history. It received several perfect scores from gaming publications upon release, and to this day, many consider it as the GOAT of games. Now, to really get into it, we need an expert. So that's why we couldn't do it. We had to reach out to our friends at Games Done Quick to send in the big guns.
That's right, we've got a lot to get through in 15 minutes, so without further ado, let us bring in our guest, ZFG. Welcome.
Hey.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah, I also wanted to clarify that Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time cannot be run in 15 minutes or less. This is our guide that will be 15 minutes or less to explain how you speedrun it.
15 minutes or less.
Whoa.
If you really want.
If you really want,
We're
well,
learning.
okay.
You preferred it, and many people preferred it. So can you give us a breakdown on how Ocarina of Time became one of the staples of the speedrunning community?
Yeah, so originally it was just Ocarina of Time. People started speedrunning it because it was just a popular game. It was like mid 2000s or so. Speedrunning was just starting to pick up popularity, and Ocarina of Time, popular game. People are going to try to speedrun it. Initially, it was kind of just beat the game quickly without, anything too special. And then people started finding some glitches that would end up like cutting off large amounts of time from the game. Like people found out you could get to the Shadow Temple early and the Spirit Temple early, and those are supposed to be like two of the last things you do in the game. And it turned out by being able to get to those early, you could skip a huge chunk of the game. And then there were more glitches found, like the infinite sword glitch, which lets your sword swing infinitely, which can also be combined with taking damage in the air to perform bomb hovering, where you can like just infinitely jump up in the air using bombs. And then there are things like a super slide, which is a glitch where you can go backwards really fast over long distances. And all these glitches coming together just started making a very interesting speedrun, because it wasn't just playing the game normally but fast anymore. It was like, oh, you can do these really cool techniques and play the game in a completely different way. And then the combination of that game being popular and then these really interesting glitches made more people more interested in it, and more people more interested in it made more people look for more glitches. And over time, more people have joined the community, more people have found more stuff. And Ocarina of Time has become one of the most broken, glitchy games in all of speedrunning, because people have looked so much and found so much. And now it's just like this amazing game where you can do so many different things with so many different glitches and play the game in so many different ways. And it makes speedrunning it just super interesting, because you can do so much in the game that you aren't supposed to, which just makes it really unique and interesting.
Would you say then that taking advantage of those glitches is the most popular way to speedrun this game? And what are some variations you've seen in terms of people like taking advantage of the different glitches that exist within it?
Yeah, the glitches are definitely one of the biggest draws to speedrunning the game, in addition to it just being a popular game overall. There is a glitchless category too that is relatively popular also. But yeah, the glitches are definitely the biggest draw. So there's a lot of different categories. Because the game is so broken, you can play the game in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. So if you just want to do the absolute fastest way to beat the game, which is known as any %, and you really take advantage of every glitch possible, you can beat the game in 7 minutes, which just it's a mess of ridiculously broken glitches.
Can I just point out that I think the average time, I looked this up, the average time for somebody just playing Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the average completion time is around 30 hours. So 7 minutes is crazy.
Yeah, it involves some extremely heavy glitch abuse. And then if you want to go to the other side of the spectrum, there's 100%, which is getting all of the items, all the extra collectibles and stuff. And we actually have two separate 100% categories, one that makes use of one particular extremely significant glitch and one that doesn't. And it's 3 hours for the very heavily glitch abuse one, 4 hours for the still pretty heavily glitch abuse, but doesn't use this one ridiculously overpowered thing. So because the game has so many glitches, there's so many different ways to play it that makes it really unique. And so we have lots of different categories with these different goals and restrictions that it just makes speedrunning the game really interesting because there's so many different ways you can play it.
So you compete in multiple different categories. What are some of your personal best run times for those categories?
Yeah, so I'm mostly known for 100% runs. My current best 100% run is 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 32 seconds, which I got just about 2 months ago. And that was for 100% with SRM. I also ran 100% without SRM a lot before SRM was even found, and have a 3:51:39, I think, throughout the time, which is 5 seconds off the record. I got beat by 5 seconds. Yeah, and then I've also run many other categories. A long time ago, I used to run any% a lot, had the any% record on and off for several years between, I want to say 2010 and 2012. I also ran all dungeons frequently, having the record many times over the course of several years. MST, another category that, like, similar to all dungeons with a bit more restriction on glitches. So yeah, I've played most of the main categories and usually have the record at least once in most main categories.
Amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about how a lot of speedrunning Ocarina of Time is taking advantage of these in-game glitches, and the more that you discover them, that kind of reshapes the way that you run the game. Can you give us some tips and tricks for speedrunning the game?
Sure, yeah, so one of the easiest glitches in the game you can do is a glitch called the infinite sword glitch, which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
All it is you do a crouch stab, which is shielding and then pressing B.
Yep.
And then you just have to interrupt that stab by reading a sign or talking to an NPC or picking something up. And if you just interrupt it near the end of your stab, then your sword hitbox just is active permanently. And you can just walk into an enemy and it'll just continuously get hit by your sword. And you can also not be able to walk off ledges. And the not being able to walk off ledges leads to a different glitch you can do with it, which is called bomb hovering, where if you shield damage in the air with the infinite sword glitch active, usually with a bomb, but it can also be done with enemies, then you'll actually just stay in the air. And so you can backflip, shield damage, stay in the air, backflip again, shield damage, and you can repeatedly rise up and just continue gaining height. And so you can use that to cross large gaps or get over big walls and stuff like that. And then there's some other big sequence breaks you can do to, like, just change the order of how you play the game. So normally you start in Kakiri Forest and you have to beat the Deku Tree before you're able to leave the forest. However, you don't actually need to do that. You actually can use a glitch to get out of the forest early. And there's this guard that blocks the way to Hyrule Field. And if you do a crouch stab against a wall with a similar timing to the infinite sword glitch, you can actually clip into the guard and roll under him and get out to Hyrule Field early without beating the Deku Tree. And then you can also get to adult early. So normally, to become adult in the game, you need to beat the first 3 child dungeons and get the 3 spiritual stones. But if you go into Temple of Time, in the Door of Time, on the very left side of the Door of Time, there's actually a little crack between the door and the wall, and you can actually get past that. You can do a backward side hop to clip out of bounds, then do a jump slash to go back inbounds and get past the door. And that lets you become adult basically right at the beginning of the game if you also combine it with the forest escape glitch. And so you can become adult very early.
Yeah.
With the whole beginning child section.
I'm having such a vivid memory right now
Right?
of escaping Kukri Forest early, like of the crouch stab and getting past the guard. Like I definitely did that one time playing the game, and I'm like, how did I know to do that, or was it just literally out of frustration and I came across it?
I feel like it completely changes the experience of what you remember. And again, right, that's why speedrunning is its own category. It's as fast as you can go. So I think for folks just getting into speedrunning, right, you gave us some really deep tips into Ocarina of Time specific. What do you give folks getting into it for the first time, regardless of what game it is?
So a good way to get into any game is see if the game has like a Discord server or something like that, or a website with resources. So a lot of games will have their own either website or Discord server with resources to learn the game, usually guides or a lot of YouTube videos to go through that teach you how to do certain tricks. Usually most game communities are actually pretty helpful with helping new players. The speedrunning community in general is very helpful and like a community oriented. So most game communities will help you out if you want to learn. There are some like smaller games where it might be hard to find a community for. Even then, there's probably still scattered YouTube videos. And if you are able to get in contact with like a few people who have run the game, they'll probably be willing to help out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is one of the things that makes the speedrunning community so unique, is it does seem to me to be a very welcoming space where people are really encouraging of one another. I mean, you talked a little bit about with Ocarina of Time specifically, how whenever the community comes across a new glitch, you kind of all come together to invent these new ways to speedrun the game and establish new categories.
Yeah, the cool thing about using glitches in speedruns is that it kind of forces the community to be collaborative and helpful, because no one person can come up with all these different strategies and all these different glitches. There's so much knowledge that goes into current OOT speedruns that like I don't think any single person in the OOT speedrunning community has all the knowledge for everything in the game. Like, we need to help each other out and to find glitches together and like create routes together and find strats together, because there's too much to go around that like no one person can really do it. And so part of that is what makes the speedrunning community so helpful, is because we have to work together to make the game as fast as possible.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fantastic parts about speedrunning. It's the fact that originally, when developers are making the game, they're like, this is a single player experience. And the speedrunning community does exactly that and makes it a place to be welcomed, to share those experiences and find even deeper connection to it. Thanks so much for joining us today, ZFG, for speedrunning us through the speedrun history of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Thanks for having me. It was great to be here.
And thanks to all of you for watching your guide to speedrunning in 15 minutes or less, presented by GEICO. And remember, to see what 15 minutes could do for your home or auto insurance, visit geico.com.